The First Battle of Ypres was a First World War battle fought around Ypres, in western Belgium during October and November 1914. The battle took place as part of the First Battle of Flanders, in which German, French, Belgian and British armies fought from Arras in France to Nieuport on the Belgian coast, from the 10th of October to mid-November. The battles at Ypres began at the end of the race to the sea, which involved attempts by the German and Franco-British armies to advance past the northern flank of their opponents. North of Ypres, the fighting continued in the Battle of the Yser, fought between the German Fourth Army and a largely Belgian force. The fighting has been divided into 5 stages: an encounter battle from 19 to 21 October, the Battle of Longwy marked from 21 to 24 October, the battles at La Bassée and Armentières to the 2nd of November, coincident with more Allied attacks at Ypres, and the Battle of Gelliveld. A 4th phase with the last big German offensive, which culminated at the Battle of Non-Bosschen on the 11th of November, then local operations, which faded out in late November. J.E. Edmonds, the British official historian, wrote that the Second Corps battle at La Bassée could be taken as separate, but that the battles from Armentières to Messines and Ypres were better understood as a battle in 2 parts, an offensive by Third Corps and the Cavalry Corps from 12 to 18 October, against which the Germans retired, and an offensive by the German 6th and 4th Armies from the 30th of October took place mainly north of the Lys, when the battles of Armentières and Messines merged with the battles of Ypres. Attacks by the BEF, Belgians and a new French 8th Army in Belgium made little progress beyond Ypres, and then the German 4th and 6th Armies took small amounts of ground at great cost to both sides. During the Battle of the Yser and further south at Ypres, Falkenhayn then tried a limited offensive to capture Ypres and Mount Camel. Neither side had moved forces to Flanders fast enough to obtain a decisive victory, and by November, both were exhausted, short of ammunition and suffering from collapses in morale. Some infantry units refused orders. The autumn battles in Flanders had quickly become static, attritional operations, unlike the battles of maneuver in the summer. French, British and Belgian troops in improvised field defences repulsed German attacks for 4 weeks. From 21 to 23 October, German reservists had made mass attacks at Longwy, with losses of up to 70% to little effect. Warfare between mass armies, equipped with the weapons of the Industrial Revolution and its later developments, proved to be indecisive, because field fortifications neutralized many classes of offensive weapon. The defensive use of artillery and machine guns had dominated the battlefield, and the ability of the armies to supply themselves and replace casualties. Prolonged battles for weeks. The German armies engaged 34 divisions in the Flanders battles, the French 12, the British 9 and the Belgians 6, along with Marines and dismounted cavalry. Falkenhayn reconsidered German strategy over the winter, because Vernichtung strategy in a dictated peace against France and Russia had been shown to be beyond German resources. Falkenhayn intended to detach Russia or France from the Allied coalition, by diplomatic as well as military action. A strategy of attrition would make the cost of the war too great, until the enemy negotiated an end to the war. The remaining belligerents would have to negotiate or face the German army concentrated on the remaining front, which would be sufficient to obtain a decisive victory. Background: strategic developments. Eastern Front. On the 9th of October, the first German offensive against Warsaw began with the battles of Warsaw and Evangerod. 4 days later, Przemysl was relieved by the advancing Austro-Hungarians, and the Battle of Chiro. 13 October. The 2nd of November began in Galicia. Czernowitz in the Bukovina was reoccupied by the Austro-Hungarian army on the 22nd of August and then lost again to the Russian army on the 28th of October. On the 29th of October, the Ottoman Empire commenced hostilities against Russia, when Turkish warships bombarded Odessa, Sevastopol and Theodosia. Next day Stanislaw in Galicia was taken by Russian forces and the Serbian army began a retreat from the line of the Drina. On 4 November, the Russian army crossed the frontier of Turkey in Asia and seized Azap. Britain and France declared war on Turkey on 5 November, and next day, Ypres in Armenia was captured. During the Bergman offensive by the Russian army, on 10 October, Przemysl was surrounded again by the Russian army. Beginning the second siege, Memel in East Prussia was occupied by the Russians a day later. Ypres was recaptured by the Ottoman army on 14 November. The Sultan proclaimed jihad. Next day the Battle of Krakow began and the second Russian invasion of North Hungary commenced. The second German offensive against Warsaw opened with the Battle of Lodz. Great Retreat. The Great Retreat was a long withdrawal by the Franco-British armies to the Marne, from 24 August to 28 September 1914, after the success of the German armies in the Battle of the Frontiers. After the defeat of the French Fifth Army at the Battle of Charleroi and the BEF in the Battle of Mons, both armies made a rapid retreat to avoid envelopment. A counter-offensive by the French and the BEF at the First Battle of Guise failed to end the German advance, and the Franco-British retreat continued beyond the Marne. From 5 to 12 September, the First Battle of the Marne ended the retreat and forced the German armies to retire towards the Aisne River, where the First Battle of the Aisne was fought from 13 to 28 September. Tactical developments. Flanders. After the retreat of the French Fifth Army and the BEF, local operations took place from August-October. General Fournier was ordered on 25 August to defend the fortress at Maubeuge, which was surrounded 2 days later by the German 7th Reserve Corps. Maubeuge was defended by 14 forts, with a garrison of 30,000 French territorials and c. 10,000 French, British and Belgian stragglers. The fortress blocked the main Cologne-Paris rail line, leaving only the line from Trier to Liège, Brussels, Valenciennes and Cambrai open to the Germans, which was needed to carry supplies southward to the armies on the Aisne and transport troops of the Sixth Army northwards from Lorraine to Flanders. On 7 September, the garrison surrendered, after super-heavy artillery from the siege of Namur demolished the forts. The Germans took 32,692 prisoners and captured 450 guns. Small detachments of the Belgian, French and British armies conducted operations in Belgium and northern France, against German cavalry and Jaeger. On 27 August, a squadron of the Royal Naval Air Service flew to Ostend, for reconnaissance sorties between Bruges, Ghent and Ypres. British Marines landed at Dunkirk on the night of 19-20 September, and on 28 September, a battalion occupied Lille. The rest of the brigade occupied Kassel on 30 September and scouted the country in motorcars. An RNAS armoured car section was created by fitting vehicles with bulletproof steel. On 2 October, the Marine Brigade was sent to Antwerp, followed by the rest of the Naval Division on 6 October, having landed at Dunkirk on the night of 4-5 October. From 6 to 7 October, the 7th Division and the 3rd Cavalry Division landed at Zeebrugge. Naval forces collected at Dover were formed into a separate unit, which became the Dover Patrol, to operate in the Channel and off the French-Belgian coast. BEF. In late September, Joffre and French discussed the transfer of the BEF the Aisne to Flanders, to unify British forces on the continent, shorten the British lines of communication from England, and to defend Antwerp and the Channel ports. Despite the inconvenience of British troops crossing French lines of communication, when French forces were moving north after the Battle of the Aisne, Joffre agreed, subject to a proviso, that French would make individual British units available for operations as soon as they arrived. On the night of 1/2 October, the transfer of the BEF from the Aisne front began in great secrecy. Marches were made at night and billeted troops were forbidden to venture outside in daylight. On the 3rd of October, a German wireless message was intercepted, which showed that the BEF was still believed to be on the Aisne. Second Corps moved from the night of 3/4 October and Third Corps followed from the 6th of October, leaving a brigade behind with First Corps, which stayed until the night of 13/14 October. Second Corps arrived around Abbeville from 8 to 9 October and concentrated to the northeast around Gena, Ivany, Guschat, La Boiselle and Ray, preparatory to an advance on Bethune. The 2nd Cavalry Division arrived at St. Paul and Hesdin on the 9th of October and the 1st Cavalry Division arrived a day later. GHQ left Fierentardenois and arrived at St. Omer on the 13th of October. Third Corps began to assemble around St. Omer and Hazebrouck on the 11th of October, then moved behind the left flank of Second Corps, to advance on Bailleul and Armentières. First Corps arrived at Hazebrouck on the 19th of October and moved eastwards to Ypres, raced to the sea after a tour of the front on the 15th of September. The new Chief German General Staff, General Erich von Falkenhayn, planned to continue the withdrawal of the right flank of the German armies in France from the Aisne, to gain time for a strategic regrouping, by moving the Sixth Army from Lorraine. A decisive result was intended to come from the offensive of the Sixth Army, but on the 18th of September, French attacks endangered the German northern flank instead, and the Sixth Army used the first units from Lorraine to repulse the French as a preliminary. The French used undamaged rail and communications networks to move troops faster than the Germans, but neither side could begin a decisive attack, having to send units forward piecemeal, against reciprocal attacks of the opponent, in the erroneously named Race to the Sea. A German attack on the 24th of September forced the French onto the defensive, and Joffre reinforced the northern flank of the Second Army. As BEF units arrived, operations began piecemeal on the northern flank. The Belgian army refused a request by Joffre to leave Antwerp and sortie against German communications. A Franco-British offensive was substituted towards Lille and Antwerp. The Allied troops managed to advance towards Lille and the Lys River, but were stopped by German attacks in the opposite direction on the 20th of October. The race ended on the Belgian coast around the 17th of October, when the last open area from Dixmude to the North Sea was occupied by Belgian troops withdrawing from Antwerp after the siege of Antwerp. The outflanking attempts resulted in indecisive encounter battles through Artois and Flanders, at the Battle of La Bassée, the Battle of Messines and the Battle of Armentières.